This is IA Forward, your playbook for success as an independent insurance agent. Here to help you knock it out of the ballpark are your hosts, Shane Tatum and Tonya Lead.
Welcome to IA Forward. And let's talk Tom Brady.
Tom Brady retired. Nothing to talk about.
But he retired before and then came back. So is it really nothing to talk about?
Once you retire for the second time, you really retire? Or does that mean, is it really 3 strikes you're out? What's the final, no, I mean it this time? When does that happen in life?
For my dad, it was the 4th time.
The 4th time. Okay. I always go to Brett Favre because that was more of my timeline of really paying attention. Brett Favre retired 3 times?
And he was the greatest. When Brett Favre retired, he was the absolute greatest. He should have never, ever done what he did after retiring at the Packers. It should not have happened.
But isn't that what we do? Yes, that can be said. That's the case. But even like Babe Ruth went somewhere after the Yankees for a brief period or something like that. There's very few that truly ride off into the sunset, and that competitive nature of just pulling you back in. Maybe it's a big payday. There's obviously that. It kind of taints the historical nature. Kudos to Derek Jeter for being the lifetime Yankee, retiring as a Yankee. There's very few of these professional athletes that truly go out on top and just let it hang there for history to judge and for everybody to just be like, he was the greatest. Most of us have to come back and fall into that unfortunate spot where people go, yeah, he shouldn't have done that.
Fun fact, Babe Ruth went to the Boston Braves.
There you go. I really worry about that with myself from just a business standpoint. I'm afraid that I'm not going to recognize when everybody's talking, whispering, going, when is he going to retire?
The people around you are pretty outspoken.
This is true.
Thing about the Brady rumors to me is that if you look at what he's got going on, you look at the fact that he is trying to purchase a stake in the Raiders. Why in the world would he be trying to make a business decision to become a team owner and then go play quarterback at the Jets? Let's just use that from a logical perspective.
That makes 0 sense from a competition standpoint. Maybe there's this idea in the back of his mind that he's going to use this enormous compensation that they're going to pay him to actually come back out of retirement to help fund this minority share purchase of the Raiders. Because we're not talking chump change here. To get Tom Brady to come out of retirement is going to cost the Jets between 20, 30 million minimum for a year, maybe more. It's a significant thing that these guys are faced with to defend them a little bit now, Brett Favre included. When they're dangling that 1 year, come on, come be the guy, come bridge the young guy into the next phase of our organization. And oh, by the way, we'll pay you $25 million to do that. Is that easy to say no to?
All I have to say is if he decides to do it, he better bring Gronk with him.
So Gronk is a good example of riding out on the high wave, possibly one of the greatest tight ends ever. Is there any question about, oh, he waited too long? Some people would say, he didn't play long enough. There's a really good compare and contrast situation between Gronk and Tom Brady.
All this being said, of course, this is an insurance podcast.
We're trying to be syndicated, so we're going straight sports now. Is that what we're doing?
But if you think about this hard market that we're in, and we're all stressed over we don't have access to the carriers that we're used to having, is this one of those situations that we are so attached to the carriers that we've always used? Kind of this Tom Brady thing. And I do have to give kudos to Tom on this because he is so masterful with his public relations. Instead of just saying yes or no, this is not going to happen, he is staying in the media with these really great answers like, next question, you already know the answer to that. I love what I have going on. So he's masterful in making sure his name is staying in the media. So I do want to give him the props and the shout out for that. But we as sports fans are so used to Tom Brady being the best and being on top. We're used to him being that front runner in the media that any chance that we have, that's what we're going to grab a hold of. Now, there are so many other things going on in the NFL right now, but if we have a chance, we're going to go back and we're going to grab a Tom Brady story because the media knows that people are going to read it, right? That we're hungry for something is going on in Tom Brady's life because that's what we're used to. I think it's the same thing with our carriers as insurance agents, that it doesn't matter what else is out there. We're going to automatically, because of human nature, go back and grab what we know. We're going to grab the Tom Bradys of the insurance world.
I think it is extremely comforting as human beings for us to always have or go back to that thing that we most know, that thing that we recognize. And carriers would be the same kind of analogy. Carriers to their agents, and I'll get into that in just a second, but there's this comfort, status quo, the devil you know versus the devil you don't. All of these kind of terms that would flow into this conversation. Where do the Jets end up? And it's a natural thought from the media, because all the media basically is a representation sometimes of the fan base. So they're asking the questions that the rest of us don't get to ask. And what these diehard Jets fans are thinking is, let's go get Tom Brady. He's kicked our butt all these years. Why can't we just go do that? They were beyond hyped to have Aaron Rodgers. The build-up for the Jets this year, and poor Zach Wilson. Poor Zach Wilson.
My heart just went out to him when that happened. Now, I'm a big Aaron Rodgers fan and have been for forever. But I know he's had some media challenges and maybe didn't have the same PR training that Tom Brady invested in. But as a QB and long-term as a human being, Aaron Rodgers has done some really great things. So I saw this as the big chance for the Jets. But I did think that this was a great leadership bridge opportunity for them, but this could turn into one of those situations just like at the Chargers where we thought we had one thing, but then our QB2 had to step up and it's going to take them to great places.
It's really just comfort. I'm going to go back to the place that makes me the most comfortable. It's the thing I know. And new stuff, someone new, etc., is scary. I don't know how it works. I don't know what they're thinking. It's a scary kind of endeavor. And I'll reverse this a little bit and talk about just some experiences I had. Yes, there are agents going back to the same carriers over and over again and not paying attention to some new carriers that they need to be thinking about and expanding their portfolio and thinking about what's going on within building carrier relationships. But I've spent the majority of my insurance career starting, growing, managing an agency network. Okay. So market access, agency network. And in the early days, the late 90s of the beginning version of our agency network, we were met with a ton of carrier resistance. Okay. And just really struggled to get carrier buy-in. And the reason that we did that is because what you had at that time over probably the second half of the 70s, 80s, 90s is you have these large national insurance companies, sometimes super regional companies that were full of an executive realm that was extremely close with what I would call a very few, let's call them country club agents. So they had this good old boy thing going on, and it was protectionism. You had executives at the regional office who were protecting the distribution of independent agencies in certain areas because they have this long-standing relationship. They were sizable independent agencies. But what was starting to happen is banks were coming into the industry and starting to buy these agencies. The easy 3 decades worth of business is easy and the world is smooth and all this is starting to get disrupted because there's some things going on inside the industry.
Was this around the same time that State Farm decided to become a bank too?
Yes. So this all comes around the financial superstore. Citigroup purchases Travelers. There's all kinds of things that are going on in the marketplace where due to some deregulation at the time, it's the financial superstore kind of concept concept. And this is going to disrupt this idea that the way it's always been is the way it's always going to be. And the executives aren't seeing it in the regional offices, in the national offices at the insurance carriers. We're pitching an idea to say, hey, you're about to lose distribution points in the national footprint. You're about to lose due to some consolidation. We were hearing about it. We were seeing it happen. And they're going to lose these distribution points. And so our entire initiation into market access and agency network was to go out and help smaller agencies find markets and help these carriers understand that these smaller agencies, through an agency network facilitator, could replace or at least help them grow as these large country club agents went through consolidation and the potential loss of production and premium because now they're no longer in the same relationship that they had always been. That was our foray, so to speak, into this world. The carrier executives at the time, they didn't love us. That was hard. I spent 5 years trying to convince what turned out to be one of our most amazing carrier partnerships. It took 5 years to actually convince them to start doing business with us. And they did. And we rode off into the sunset together and it's been great and all those things. But 5 years to get them to say yes, that is built on this same premise that we're seeing with some agencies today, which is, oh no, I'm going to keep going back to the same place. And it doesn't matter how they treat me. It doesn't matter what they're doing. I'm just going back there because it's comfortable. It's all I know. It's what I know. And that's a big part of what I experienced back in the 90s in a reverse way. But I think it's very prevalent today. And I think it's exactly why the media keeps the Tom Brady saga in the news.
I love the movie National Treasure. During non-football season, that's one of those Sunday afternoon, veg out and watch Nicolas Cage kind of movies.
Oh, I love it. I love both of them.
There's a quote in that movie where Nicolas Cage's dad says, cooperation only lasts as long as the status quo is unchanged. And I think that's one of those things that we're afraid that if we change the status quo, something's going to go wrong.
This is natural. It's even more of a natural thing in the insurance industry, because to be fair and to recognize that I don't want to be hypocritical here when I make this comment, stability and the infinite game, what says standard more than that? Going back to the same thing, doing the same thing over and over again, being repetitive and being consistent is extremely important when it comes to being a long cycle, successful independent agency. So what is going to be foreign in that is that we're saying here, you're a business owner first, and you have an insurance license. And sometimes you've got to bob and weave and find your way through some market cycles. And sometimes just going back to that same-o isn't going to fix your problem. That's something that we have to recognize as agency owners, that we have to get our head around and get comfortable with that that's going to happen to us. And it's not unnatural. It's natural. I observed a really good point being made with a travel ball softball coach that I coached with. He made a comment to this group of players, all of who were committed at the collegiate level. And he said, what I want you to do is I want you to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. That's it. That's where we are. Does that mean that this market cycle is forever changed? That there's some things in this market cycle that are never going to go back to the same? It's very possible. Let's think about COVID. There are some things post-COVID. There are some new normals. And for this hard market cycle, it is officially classified, in my opinion, as a major industry event. And there is a really good chance that coming out of this cycle, we are going to see some new norms. And so being comfortable with being uncomfortable is going to be something that we're going to have to think about doing.
Going back to National Treasure, later in the movie, Patrick Gates, who was Nicolas Cage's dad in the movie, made the comment, the status quo has changed, son. And I think that's exactly what we're saying here. The status quo has changed. So that means if you keep doing the things that you've always done, you're probably not going to get the same kinds of results.
The definition of insanity doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. That is something that I've thought about a lot throughout my insurance career. One of the things that's probably been the case with the way our business has gone from small town independent agency to regional agency to agency network management to multi-state expansion and now investing in other insurance industry businesses and just thinking about the last 28 years, if there's one thing that's probably been the same around here, it's that things are always changing. So we are a little bit unique in the sense that we have always had new iterations, new enhancements, things that needed to happen for us to keep making progress in market cycles and running into a roadblock, needing to back up, find a different path. These are natural occurrences inside our organization, week to week, month to month, year to year.
So how do you say that when I am one of the newest team members that you've had and I've been there over 6 years? So to hear you say the one thing is that things are always changing is interesting because the people that are around you have been there 2 decades and more.
We always tend to gravitate to things are always changing, meaning people are always changing, or it's different personnel, because that's what we see in corporate world. That's what we see in big, large organizations is there's a CEO change and then they come in and bring all their people in and they get rid of the old people. And there's all kinds of things that happen. For us, it's been about change within the dynamic of our people and our people being incredibly resilient to go with that change and trust directional change and things that we're looking at. For me, it's that our people don't change very often. We do add people occasionally, and we continue to look to add people. And as we grow,
few of us get to go through initiation and join the cult.
That's right. So eventually you get to get into the circle. Trust is earned and gained. And then all of a sudden you do jobs for a year or two, and then you get changed and you do a different job for a year or two. And then you got another job, and then everything's tweaked. And I think it's necessary when you're growing an organization. Now, if you're 3 to 5 employee agency and you hover there and you don't really get past that mark, not that there's anything wrong with that, because there's not. There's a really good business model in that realm where you can be extremely profitable, have an extremely well-balanced life, and there's not a reason to go past that point. Where we are is we are helping those agencies become stronger, more efficient, better processes so that they can continue to grow their profit margin without the pressure of having to just grow for the sake of it.
Let's say we have an agent that's listening, or maybe 3, that are ready to accept this idea that the status quo is changing. How do they harness the power of that to make their agency more successful?
We have to change our expectations a little bit. I don't love the phrase lower your expectations.
But I've heard you quote my husband recently more than once, saying better living through lower expectations.
I think that's a really good point to bring Daniel into the podcast here. He should be a guest.
Oh, that would be awesome.
It would be fun.
He would kill me.
Yeah.
That'd be fantastic.
And he might kill you, but he wouldn't kill me, so I'm not really worried about it. I think
there is that. But you just can't call him by his name, remember?
And I don't know that I can call another man the cute boy. Just throw it.
Actually, you did. The very first conference in Galveston, Texas that I ever brought him to, he came down to our end of the evening reception and he was standing there and he was looking around for me, and you were having the conversation with Julie saying, who is that? We don't know him, blah, 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 blah. And I walked up and you walked up to him and said, you're the cute boy. And I thought my husband was going to try to crawl under a table somewhere because that's the first thing that you called him.
Okay. I'm getting old and my memory is short. I think that he's right. I don't love the idea of this lowered expectation kind of mindset for myself. But to be honest and to think about it really thoroughly we put expectations out there on other people, and those other people don't know the expectations because we don't communicate them. What happens is we take this high expectation concept and we put it out there and we say, okay, I expect everybody to be at a certain level if I'm a high expectation person. But they don't even know that they're not at the same expectation level on a specific situation because they don't know the specific situation even exists. We want people to do things the way we would do things, but we didn't communicate that. I do think that we have to lower some initial expectations. People are going to be different. These carriers you've been working with for the last decade that you're so comfortable with, if you bring in some new carriers and you start working with them, guess what? They're going to be different. Is it going to be worse? Is it going to be better? Not necessarily. It's just different. What we do, unfortunately, is we categorize different as less or more instead of different just being different. That's where I would say maybe lower our expectation from the standpoint of it's going to be different. Don't expect to be carrier specific. Don't expect for every single carrier to have systems at the Progressive Safeco level. I'll just be specific there because they've historically had really easy interfacing, agent-facing systems. Don't expect this newer carrier or even an older regional carrier that's trying to get there with their technology to be at the same level as Progressive day one. But does that mean you shouldn't work with them? They're still a really good carrier. They still are financially stable. And okay, you had to click the mouse 3 more times to issue the policy. Is that really something that we're going to get worked up about? Areas to improve for that regional carrier? Absolutely. Something to prevent us from doing business with them? Absolutely not.
Those extra clicks cause some people so much stress and in turn cause us stress. It's unbelievable to me.
I don't understand it. Maybe it's because I was around when my beginning was the tail end of the paper app days. In 1997, it was different than 2007. And guess what? In 2023, it's way, way different than 2007. I don't think the iPhone or the iPod existed until 2005 or something like that. So what we have is this generation, they don't know anything different. Gen Z doesn't understand that there were days when you didn't have a single click option. That's where we have to lower our expectation a little bit and say, okay, maybe in the insurance industry today, that's not feasible. Doesn't mean somewhere, somebody, some insurtech isn't working on it, and great. I hope they are, but that doesn't mean that you should not do business with somebody because they're just not there yet.
Sometimes you have to look past it not being pretty because it might be exactly what you need.
Yeah, I love that too. Pretty is important in designing a product. Obviously, Steve Jobs proved that.
Do you know why I'm so anti-iPhone?
I assumed it was because you married the cute boy and he was an Android guy because he's...
Oh, no. I have been an Android girl long before the cute boy was in my life.
So was that one of the matching preferences? Did y'all meet online and y'all both matched up because you were Android users?
So we were both Android people. No, I was down on the Gulf Coast. I was living in Louisiana. I was down in Biloxi with some friends and going to a restaurant called The Shed. And I put it into her iPhone to get directions there. And it tried to take us out in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. And I'm like, this whole Apple thing is not working for me. And I went back to the office and I was sharing this with a friend of mine who had been trying to get me to move beyond my flip phone into the world of smartphones. And he's, don't do that. Just stop. And he said, I'm going to take you to the store. We're going to pick you out the phone that you need. And we called it the Magic Pink Box. It even had the little slide out keyboard. To this day, my phone is still in a pink carrier because it has always been the Magic Pink Box to me. But yes, my preference for Android over Apple came from it trying to make me drive into the Gulf of Mexico.
The dreaded Apple Maps. See, that's what's funny. What's really funny. I'm a Google Maps guy, and I prefer Google Maps historically over the Apple Maps integrated into iPhone. And whereas my wife is an Apple Maps fan, but she probably did not use those maps back in the day where it was going to send you out in the middle of the ocean. That's completely understandable if your introduction to an iPhone was through the Maps app back in the day because it was not well.
And Chris is like the most technology advanced human being that I've ever met in my life. And when it comes to technology, I always trusted him. And if he took me to the store and told me this is what to buy, then I bought it.
Lesson for our carriers. I don't subscribe to you only have one shot, but think about that when you are at a spot where you're going to upgrade your technology, when you are going to do something on the technology side of things. Think about it from a non-insurance standpoint. And I think that's what happens is we obviously have carrier systems and we think agents are going to be the only people using our systems. This is agent facing technology. We can let the systems be very nerdy towards the insurance industry because they're going to be used by agents. Here's my issue with that. We make a consumer friendly site that's super easy and we make an agent facing site that's really clunky and difficult. My problem with that is us agencies out here growing and doing things, we are hiring the next generation. We are putting the next generation to work in sales and account management. And those individuals are coming in to our businesses. And then we're struggling to get them to use your platform because it was designed for the CIC designation, not the salesperson. Do we need to keep improving and training our people? Yes, but we can make it more efficient if we get into the plain language movement with our technology. That's something to think about from a carrier standpoint.
I'm going to leave us today with this quote from Babe Ruth. Never let the fear of striking out get in your way.
Attitude to choice. Make a great one.
Bye, y'all.
Ready to get the ball rolling with your independent agency? Learn more at IntegraAgent.com. That's IntegraAgent.com. Thank you for joining us on IA Forward. Make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now or learn more at IAForward.com.